I wanted to let you know that I do have a Patreon that is fully ASMR. I did decide for July just to post ASMR videos on my YouTube, but that's only gonna last for a month, and typically I only post either 2 or 3 ASMR videos a month on my YouTube channel, but on Patreon everything is in ASMR. So if you want extra ASMR content from me every month, definitely check out my Patreon. It's always linked down below. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, I'm Sommer. Today I wanted to do a tag that I just invented. Also, really quickly, I do apologize if you can hear the AC in the background. It is very hot. It is summer where I am, so that's why. But this tag is called the 3 Wishes tag. So if anyone wants to do this tag, like if you're a smaller ASMR artist, feel free to do this. At the end of the video, I'm gonna mention a few people who I do want to tag. I am unsure if they're gonna actually see this video, but if anyone else wants to do this, then you can. Essentially, this is just 3 wishes that you have for the world. So if you stumbled upon a genie bottle, for example, and you could have any 3 wishes that you want, you would talk about that in this video. That is the premise of this tag, and they don't have to be deep. They can be light, they can be serious if you would like them to be. Personally, I want to do kind of a mixture of both serious and non-serious. Also, I'm wearing my Sunroom necklace, so if someone wants to tell me that I look like Sunroom, I would really recommend it. That was actually always my dream in life, was to look like Sunroom. If you grew up in Y2K, you definitely understand what I'm talking about, but I also feel like H2O became trendy maybe during the pandemic because of TikTok. So if you didn't grow up in Y2K, you probably have watched H2O. And if you haven't, what are you doing with your life? I also have some fidget toys here. These are new. They're also a little bit harder to fidget with than my other mushrooms, but I can still tap on them. I got blue. I got like a clear blue. Blue is my favorite color. Pink is probably my second favorite color, but I had to get this one when I saw it. I feel like less people are making 3-dimensional candy mushrooms these days, so when I see them, I feel like I need to add to my collection because a couple of my mushrooms have aged and the beads are coming off of them. So I have that one, and I also have a clear one with rainbow string. I thought this was really pretty as well. So I can use these while I'm discussing my tag topic. The first wish that I would wish for, this is also like the lightest of the 3 for me. I wish that Walt Disney World, because I'm closer to Walt Disney World, so, and I've never been to Disneyland, so I'm gonna be a little bit selfish here with this first wish, but I wish that Walt Disney World would open a Y2K themed ride / gift were huge in the early 2000s. And I don't think that the ride would have to choose one decom, because how could you choose? They're all so different, and they all kind of have different fan bases. Arguably, you could say that High School Musical or the Cheetah Girls were the most popular decoms, but every decom has a good number of fans, so instead of choosing one or two, I would want a ride that would be similar to the Figment ride in Epcot, where you go through a house, but the house is completely Y2K themed. So they would have like a landline phone, for example, and old bulky computers, but the furniture in the house would either be like modeled after decom rooms, or it would be like a Phantom type thing where there would be different posters for different decoms. And personally, I'm not a huge roller coaster lover, so I don't care if it would be like flat like the Figment ride, or if they were gonna do it more like a drop ride, or I don't know. There's so many different words that could describe different roller coasters that honestly I'm unaware of because I don't ride roller coasters. But for me, it would not necessarily be about the roller coaster. I mean, it would be fun to go into like a Y2K themed house. But for me, I would be way more excited about the gift shop. There would be Lizzie McGuire stuff in there because of the Lizzie McGuire movie. There would be High School Musical themed stuff, especially like Sharpay's wardrobe. Like, could you imagine the gift shop just for Sharpay's wardrobe? So that's my first wish. I wish that I could go more into detail about that, but I feel like I explained it well. I feel like you know what I'm talking about. But they need something to commemorate Y2K, because that was definitely a moment for Disney Channel. And either just have a shop and have it in Disney Springs, or if they were gonna do the ride, they need to do the ride in Hollywood Studios. So that is my first wish. That's also the lightest one. I'm not saying that my next two are going to be super heavy, and they're also not related to current world events, because I want this to be a relaxing experience. And I don't think that I've ever talked about current world events on this channel, or at least not in an ASMR video. I don't want to be a journalist. I just want to help relax you. This next wish kind of relates to Y2K. Like, it's something that I wish would have happened differently, especially in the early 2010s. And this kind of gets into what I actually studied in college, because I studied app and web design in college, but it wasn't heavy on coding. So I would have to work with a developer to actually make like a functional website, but it was essentially like graphic design, but it was super focused on apps and websites. And you know, a part of me was not happy with my major because it was not art. It was not a super creative creative major. We didn't make things because we felt like it, We had to rely on things that were going on, conventional things that were going on in the tech industry to determine what we were going to do, how we were going to design things, and then we had to rely on user testing to validate our designs, which, I'm not saying that I hated it, but it was different from what I thought that it would be, and it wasn't as creative as I thought that it would be. So anyway, in my major, we also studied a little bit of color psychology and why people make decisions that they do. And often when it comes to technological devices, it is because of confusion. And it's not necessarily the user's fault, it's the design's fault. So we studied a lot about that. We studied a little bit about industrial design, a little bit about ethnography, I think that's what that's called, as well as how people report information about different societies and different cultures academically. So this probably doesn't make any sense to you if you are not knowledgeable about the tech industry, and I'm sorry about that. But essentially it was a little bit of psychology and a little bit of graphic design, and it was rolled into kind of a STEM lens on the world. I didn't love my major, but I also didn't hate my major. My deepest regret for my major was graduating during the pandemic, but this wish is not about that. It's not about selfish things, if I could go back and choose a different major. Honestly, I kind of think that I would if I could, but that's not what this wish is. So let's get into the topic. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on and on, but I felt like I needed to set up why this is something that I thought about. So my second wish is that in the 2010s, tech companies kind of rolled out features a little bit more slowly, specifically when it came to graphics. And I'm not talking about if you're a photographer. I'm not saying I wish that social media was bad for you. I'm not saying if you are a YouTuber, I wish that your videos didn't upload in HD to YouTube. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, if you were a preteen who was not a professional entertainer, for example, on Instagram, and you were just randomly scrolling and looking at pictures of people, I wish that those pictures were not super HD, were not in full color. I wish that they could roll out different features a little bit more slowly, and you would have to prove to somebody, I don't know who, I'm not a policy maker, but if you were a professional photographer on Instagram, you would have to show a portfolio and prove that you actually had a good quality camera and that you were trying to do this as a job in order for your pictures to get posted in full color. Yeah, I don't think that I'm making sense, but I think that for certain age groups, especially if social media devalued the color range of colors that were being posted on social media, I think that would help teenagers and preteens kind of disassociate social media from real life. If they could see, hey, this probably shouldn't be taken so seriously. It's in a different color range than what is realistic. For example, I really think that would help online that they probably don't know in real life, that are probably really trying to be models and are probably adults. Because if a teenager starts comparing themselves to people in their 20s, we already know that that's not great. We already know that when TV shows like, for example, Pretty Little Liars, that was like the first thing that came to mind, okay? Most of the main characters who pretended like they were in high school, they were actually in their 20s, and it probably wasn't great that I was 14 and I was watching shows like that, and I was trying to look like them as much as possible, for example. So I think that random people on social media who are not trying to be professional entertainers or professional photographers, I think that their content needs a little bit of separation from reality, and I don't know how you would do that. I don't know if it would be, making the colors a little bit different from more realistic colors. I don't know if it would be putting up a disclaimer on posts. I don't know if it would be making people who don't have IDs yet, like people under 16, making them watch educational tutorials after they spend a certain amount of time on a platform, like per week. I don't know what it would be, but I kind of wish that we could go back to the 2010s and tell tech companies not to roll out a bunch of high quality technological features all at the same time, if they had been slower about progressing, especially the graphic technology. I think that would have been better for youth's mental health. I hope that I'm not boring you, because a part of me feels like this is like a college thesis, and I don't mean to do that. But I also will admit that I wouldn't want that to be done to YouTube, because video, especially like long form video, is a lot different than still photos. But I also know that I'm choosing favorites when I say that, because I prefer YouTube over any other social media platform. So I'm not really sure what the real answer to mental health and youth being bad is, and I know that a lot of people blame social media, and I don't want to do that, but at the same time, I do feel like there needs to be a little bit of separation between random things that young people see on social media all the time versus things that are actually credible, whether that be like information or like a professional photographer trying to get their name out there versus a random young person with a cell phone that might be editing their photos a little bit too much. So I'm not really sure how to answer that question, but I do wish that the 2010s had gone a little bit differently with technology, and I'm not even sure if that would have changed anything now, because there's been so much time since the 2010s, so I'm not sure if everything would be the same now. So I hope that if you're still here, that made sense, and that you know what I'm talking about, and maybe you care a little bit about that topic. I guess if you didn't care about that topic, you wouldn't still be here. I was gonna mention that I recently got 2 e-readers because of Amazon Prime Week. So I was gonna mention how their interfaces are different compared to like a full-on iPad's interface, especially when it comes to color presentation. e-readers, because personally I'm somewhere in between like a bookworm and an art appreciator, so I was not interested in an e-reader that didn't have color. That was just completely off of my wish list. But these e-readers have fully pastel colors, and they're so nice, they're so pretty, they don't strain my eyes at all. This is not sponsored, I'm just letting you know some recent life updates, okay? But I feel like if, like, the kids' versions of apps, although I know it's super easy to get around kids' versions of apps, like, it's not like social media apps make you show an ID when you are creating your profile, and personally I would be a little bit uncomfortable with that, because I do feel like that would be an invasion of privacy in a lot of cases. But because they don't do that, a lot of kids are not using those apps and lying to adults. But anyway, I feel like the kids' versions of social media apps should be in pastel colors, and the photos on the feed should be, like, obviously kind of away from reality. And I've been having such a good time with these e-readers, like, I don't even mind that the colors are not as rich as the colors on my iPad, for example. I really like that interface. I do think that if young people grew up with color schemes on their devices being more muted, then they might be less prone to using their devices all the time, because real life would be more colorful. And I do think that that's important for a certain stage of development, personally. So maybe I can make like a full-on tablet, you know, become a tech inventor and make a full-on children's tablet that has like pastel colors and other things that I studied that I'm not going to explain to you, that might be better for younger children's development. That's probably not going to happen. Like, I'm probably not going to do that. But if you are an inventor, if you are a tech investor, personally, I think that that would be a good idea. I'm going to move on to my third wish, because I feel like I kind of beat this into the ground. But if you're still here, thank you, thank you, thank you. And comment down below either a pin or a stack of books to let me know that you are still here and that all of that made at least a little bit of sense to you. I really hope that it did. My third wish might make me a little bit emotional, and it's also the heaviest one of my three wishes, and that is... Okay, so for context, I was born with one food allergy, and that was okay with me, you know? After primary school, after dealing with like Halloween and Valentine's Day for a few years in public school, I never really cared that much about having a food allergy. It was just one food allergy. It was pretty simple. But in middle school, I got diagnosed with celiac disease, and it completely changed my life. And having two food allergies, not one, but two food allergies, is really hard. Also, celiac disease is a lot harder than my other food allergy, because my next day, I don't know if there's cheese on a hamburger, for example. I mean, I don't eat beef, but theoretically, I couldn't do that because I'm allergic to milk. But if something was being grilled on a grill that had butter on it, I could do that. Now, I do not have anaphylaxia, so if you have anaphylaxia, please do not listen to me about that. I actually have a rare milk allergy, and it is serious, but my doctors were not really concerned about cross-contamination. Celiac disease is completely different, and you really do have to worry about cross-contamination. It is the bane of my existence, just celiac disease in general, not just cross-contamination. It is the bane of my existence, and life has not been the same since I was diagnosed with celiac disease. And I also know that there are a lot of other autoimmune diseases that are completely life-changing, and right now they are irreversible. There is no cure for celiac disease. And it's just really hard. It makes social experiences really hard. It is a mouthful to explain to anyone who works in the food industry. Going to fast food restaurants is a nightmare. I love to eat. I love food. Eating is like my favorite thing in the world. But having my medical conditions makes it really difficult. So my third wish would be to eradicate all autoimmune conditions. So that includes celiac disease, that includes type 1 diabetes, that includes so many other conditions that I'm not gonna try to pronounce because they have weird names. So yeah, I decided for that one. I wasn't gonna be like too specific or selfish because it would be kind of easy for me just to say, you know, I wish that there was a cure for celiac disease, or I wish that celiac disease didn't exist. But I did want that to be broader because I know that autoimmune conditions affect a lot of different people. So it would be great if type 1 diabetes just didn't exist. It would be great if celiac disease didn't exist. I'm not a doctor, so those are kind of the only two that I can think of on the top of my head that are not named after someone's last name in another language. Like, I really don't want to butcher any last names or medical condition names. So yeah, that is my third wish, and it did make me emotional. I didn't cry. I kind of thought that I might cry because it's just so hard, specifically having celiac disease. But there are treatments that are constantly being tested for celiac disease, and I'm sure most other autoimmune conditions. So there is hope for the future.